Now, there's some other things I want to say about Reformed theology, and that is that Reformed theology is not only systematic, but Reformed theology is Catholic. Now, what do I mean by that when I say that Reformed theology is Catholic? Usually we think of the Reformation as being a protest against Catholicism. But remember that the theology that emerged and came to the front of the stage in the 16th century was not something that was invented for the first time in the 16th century. It was a reformation, not a revolution. It was an attempt in the 16th century to recover the historic Christian apostolic faith. And at the time of the Reformation, virtually every church that arose out of it continued to embrace the Catholic truths of the Christian faith. That is, the truths that are embraced and confessed by Christians of all stripes, of all denominations, and of all traditions. That is, here the word Catholic does not refer to the Roman Catholic Church or to the Russian Catholic Church or some particular group, but rather the term is used in its original sense, meaning universal, the whole church. For example, in the early centuries, the church had in assembly crucial councils to deal with major theological issues, with the threat of major heresies, such as the Arian controversy in the 4th century, the Monophysite controversy in the 5th century, and so on, where at these great councils, such as the Council of Nicaea, the deity of Christ was firmly embraced and confessed. At the 5th century, in the Council of Chalcedon, the church confessed her faith that Christ is truly man and truly God. Now, the affirmations of historic Christianity about the Trinity, the deity of Christ, the atonement of Christ, those are affirmations that are shared by all Orthodox Christian bodies historically. Those affirmations are found historically in all of the creeds of the various denominations, so that the Lutherans and the Methodists and the Episcopalians and the Presbyterians historically have a large body of doctrine that they hold in common with each other. And that common essence of Christian thought is the foundation upon which all theology rests. So when we talk about Reformed theology as a distinctive, for example, to differentiate it from say, dispensational theology or Lutheran theology or whatever other particular theology we're talking about, we acknowledge at the outset that there is a common core of doctrine that is part of all of these different groups. Now, the reason I say that is there's a tendency to think about Reformed theology as if Reformed theology were simply the distinctives of Reformed theology. Some people say to me, well, tell me about Reformed theology. Isn't that the 5 points of Calvinism? And I will say, well, yes, the 5 points of Calvinism have much to say and much to do with the Reformed faith. And we'll get to an exposition of those concepts in this series. But it would be a very serious distortion of Reformed theology to think of it exclusively in terms of our distinctives. We must remember that those doctrines rest upon a common foundation that we share with a host of other Christian bodies. That is, we have a Catholic faith.
It must be noted that R.C. Sproul was a Type A Trinitarian. These are the Trinitarians that admit that the Trinity is Catholic. Type B Trinitarians such as John MacArthur and James White are those type of Trinitarians that will never admit to the pagan origin of the Trinity. On the contrary, they will teach their followers that the Trinity is biblical, and they will focus on certain Greek words so that they can continue trying to prove that the Son of God was pre-existent and eternal alongside of the Father. Michael Brown and Jeff Durbin are another example of Type B Trinitarians. Whenever you listen to their lectures or teachings, you will never hear them admit to the pagan origin of the Trinity. On the contrary, they will explain away using verses of the Bible and putting in their preconceived ideas that they got from the Greek philosophers of the 4th century.